The first thing we're going to do is to review and approve the minutes of 1/19/2021. And does anybody have a motion? For the minutes?
Make a motion, we accept the minutes.
Second? Kevin?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion on the minutes? Any questions? All right, so the minutes are approved for, got it right, for January 19th, 2020. Administrative matters. I'm going to skip over that because, and if that's okay with you, if I switch around the agenda, which was the first part of my agenda. So we're going to switch it around since we have Green Peak Solar here, and they asked if we would be interested in getting a little more information about the project, and I said that would be great. So, oh, there's Jeff. So that was the other person I was looking for. If you guys want to do your presentation and then we can ask questions, go for it.
Great. Chris, can you do the screen share?
I can't, but Katie can. Katie's.
I'm Chris Cadwell. Sorry, guys.
Oh, that Chris.
Yeah, Chris. I can be technical services.
Awesome. If you can work on, so I'll just do some introductions. So, hi everybody. I'm Nathaniel Vandal. With me is Chris Cadwell from Green Peak Solar. And thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to us tonight. And we look forward to any questions you might have. So, if folks have questions, feel free to jump in while we're presenting. We're also happy to address them at the end. So kind of however anybody wants to do it, but the intent is to answer any questions you have.
So,
do you need me to give you co-host? Yeah,
yes,
okay.
Cool. So while we're waiting, I'll just.
Did you get it?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe I'll wait.
I didn't make the connection, Nathaniel,
Because
because I couldn't remember your last name.
Yeah, the Lindsay might throw folks off.
Okay. Are you guys seeing anything?
Yes, I am.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Take it away.
Great. So, as I mentioned, Chris and I are Green Peak Solar. We're a renewable energy developer based out of Waitsfield. Chris lives in Pittsford, Vermont. I'm in Waitsfield. We've been at it for about 8 years in Vermont. We've worked with a variety of folks from utilities directly to towns and municipalities on projects that really range from 150 kilowatts up to 5 megawatts AC that have been with utilities directly. So through that process, we've been focusing typically on little larger projects. We've really have a track record of trying to help demonstrate some of the lowest cost solar power in the state. And we're really proud that our projects have helped to save Vermont ratepayers money, while the state's also becoming more renewable. Lastly, I was appointed by the PUC as a supply representative to the Vermont System Planning Committee, and that's basically Velco's planning committee that looks at a variety of things, including how to integrate renewables and battery energy storage, which is kind of where my expertise is. So jumping right into the project, this is a location map showing where the project is located. So kind of right in the center, you've got downtown Bristol with the kind of four-way intersection right by the town offices. The project is located on top of Cane Hill Road, which if you go south on South Street and cross the New Haven, Cane Hill is kind of directly across the river. The project is located in about a 20-acre field that's elevated on top of this plateau at about the same elevation as the town. and is surrounded by pretty significant trees on all sides. We'll show you some photos that can also help orient you here. So this first one is this is a view from basically just from Route 17 or Main Street, just east of downtown, looking out kind of across across the river to the plateau where you can see the red arrows are. So that the white area way in the back is where the project area is. To kind of orient you a little more, the pump house would be to the left in that photo where the town well is. This is another photo, similar vantage point. This is from basically Main Street right at in front of the town offices, looking down South Street. Again, the project area is kind of the flat white area in the photo. Obviously these are all leaf off conditions, which we feel like, does a really good representation of showing you what it would look like, in kind of the worst case. In the summer months, we would anticipate that it would be difficult to see the project at all. Lastly, kind of, at least my favorite, the view from the Creamy Stand. This is looking, southeast with the Lathrop Band Mill kind of to your right, and the bridge on South Street being, kind of more or less below where that red arrow is pointing. Cool. So we started this project about a year ago, working with the Lathrops. We signed a land agreement with them to develop the project in February of 2020. At about the same time, we also reached out to the town for some initial feedback. Specifically, you guys were in the process of developing an enhanced energy plan, and the project is not located in one of the preferred areas that you guys identified. And we basically wanted to know if this was a reason that we should, not proceed with the project. It's our understanding that Chris presented it to you guys at a meeting in early February. And at the time, we didn't hear anything that would lead us to believe that it would be against the town's wishes to continue pursuing the project. So later that summer, we worked on the power purchase agreement for the project, kind of secured some of the contracts that are also necessary for us to sell the power and continue developing the project. And then we really kicked off our additional outreach late last year. So in the December timeframe, we sent a note to all of the abutters around the project, kind of re-engaged with Chris and Valerie, providing some information about the project. We offered to have a site visit. Obviously, with coronavirus, everything is so difficult and complicated, but we did hear from one group of abutters who live at the top of Cane Hill Road who had some questions about the use of the road. But generally, I would say, we haven't heard anything negative from any of the project neighbors, which is terrific. As you guys know, we provided a 45-day notice in early January. And really the purpose of that is to give you information about the project, let you know that we're preparing a CPG petition. And really we're here today to kind of follow up on that information packet so that if there's any feedback that we can incorporate into our filing in early March, we can do that. I will add that, we will be able to incorporate feedback throughout that process. So I don't want you guys to feel like there's a drop dead date or any kind of tight deadline, but we do anticipate filing in early March. So we certainly recognize, as I mentioned before, that you guys have done a lot of great work on your enhanced energy plan. It's really terrific to see, your guys' commitment to the 90 by 50 energy goals, which, are basically 90% renewable sources by 2050. Electrically, what does this project mean? I think in the plan, you guys had calculated that you would need about 7,600 megawatt hours by 2025 and 16,000 megawatt hours by 2050. This project would get you about halfway there. It would contribute about 4,500 megawatt hours of energy. My understanding from the town plan and then some publicly available information on installed solar capacity is that on an energy basis, you guys are looking at around 3,600 megawatt hours of production today. So we feel like this project would pretty much help you to meet your 2025 goal right on time. In terms of other kind of benefits to Bristol, we're estimating that it would generate about $19,000 a year in property taxes for the solar project. We've also are proposing, which we'll talk about in a little more detail later, to a battery energy storage project located, next to the solar project. And the benefits of that battery energy storage project in terms of tax revenue are estimated to be about $5,000 a year. The battery storage is, one you guys certainly recognized in your town plan that, the addition of battery energy storage is really useful, and coincident with renewables. Helps to add benefits in terms of peak reduction, resiliency, reliability. And Chris and I have worked with GMP directly on 2 other battery energy storage projects that are standalone as well. So certainly the utility sees battery energy storage as a way to also save ratepayers money. As I mentioned before, the project is not in a preferred location in the town plan, but we do believe that it's consistent with a lot of the other proposed siting criteria that are in the town plan, which we could talk about in a little more detail when we get to the draft site plan. Lastly, a question that comes up pretty frequently in these discussions is around screening. We have not proposed any screening at this time, given what we believe is pretty significant natural screening. However, if you guys have any comments, would like to see additional screening, we're absolutely committed to working with you on that and would be happy to incorporate that into our proposed site plan and process. So this project is not a net metering project, which is what most municipalities are familiar with. This project would actually sell the energy and all renewable energy credits to basically the Vermont utilities as a composite. So this project, part of what we were doing this summer was bidding this project into basically an auction that the state holds on an annual basis, which is for 2.2 megawatt projects like this. Basically, they select projects based on price with the intent of developing, really low cost projects that will sell directly to the utilities. So we were successful in that auction, and this is actually was the lowest priced project from that auction from 2020. So we would be selling our kilowatt hours for under 9 cents a kilowatt hour, which is a pretty significant reduction to what smaller net metering projects are paid from the utilities. So what that means is it means that it's really reduced energy costs for all Vermont ratepayers, which we're really proud of. And lastly, we already touched on a little bit, but the battery basically would be intended to act as a peaking resource. As we see more renewables, particularly solar, coming on the system, we anticipate that the peak time of use will shift from the daytime, which it has been historically, to the nighttime. And so the addition of battery energy storage helps you reduce those peak usage times when your solar isn't generating. And that helps to, not only reduce costs for ratepayers, but also improve reliability on the system, because you're not having to build out transmission to meet these, huge demands that crop up at nighttime. Lastly, we're also considering, opportunities for dual use agriculture. It's worth mentioning there are some statewide prime agricultural soils on the site. We've spoken with the Agency of Agriculture and will be committed to basically stockpiling all prime agricultural soils on the project. And then when the project is done, restoring the soils to their existing state. In addition, we're considering opportunities for dual use agriculture. We've seen a lot of really great work in pollinators, using pollinator friendly seeding. And then also we're really excited to see people using sheep for grazing as well. Jumping to the site plan. So apologies, this is pretty small. But basically we're proposing for access the site, we're proposing to use the existing Cane Hill Road. Once on top of the hill, we would then build, additional road to access the battery energy storage project. And then also the solar project inverters. So you can see we're not proposing to do any tree clearing on the site, with the exception of a narrow right-of-way to bring the power from Pump House Road up on top of the plateau for the project. Additionally, we've really tried to minimize any glare or sound or noise considerations for abutting neighbors. There's no wetlands on top of the project area, no necessary wildlife habitat or other sensitive species. There is a groundwater source protection area on the right side or the east side of the project. And we've avoided that with all proposed infrastructure. That's not typically a requirement of the state, but given that we have the space and the ability to do it, that's what we're proposing here. The technology, we'll just speak a little bit to the technology that we're proposing here. It's called a single axis tracker. That's why the rows are actually oriented north-south as opposed to east-west. This is an example 2.2 megawatt single axis tracker project. And basically what the single axis tracker does is it rotates from east to west every single day following the diurnal pattern of the sun. And what that does is it really helps us to maximize our energy production for the land use. So we're really trying to get as much energy as we can, out of every acre that we occupy. So with that, there was a lot of information, but if anybody has questions, we're happy to open it up.
Thank you. That was great. I'm sure people have some questions or maybe not, but I have one question. So the battery part of it, that's not a separate project. The battery storage is part of the overall project.
So the battery storage would be considered a separate project, in that the usage of the battery won't be tied directly to the solar output. In other words, if Green Mountain Power wanted to use the battery, it's not basically beholden to the solar project to provide value. So because they're kind of separate value streams and separate contracts with the utility, they're actually separate projects. What we're proposing to do is apply for two separate CPG petitions, but we're asking that the PUC basically merge those petitions into one proceeding to streamline things. But they would be considered two separate projects, but because they share access road, they share interconnection facilities, we're kind of, for the purposes of this presentation, we're really looking at them as kind of one impact.
So those batteries are storing the energy generated at this site, though, correct?
Yes. So they would be connected to the grid, independent, each project would be connected to the same point at the grid, but the batteries don't have to be fed directly from the solar. In other words, if there was a need for the batteries to discharge in the morning hours to meet a peak constraint or something like that, they could actually be charged at night from the grid and then discharged in that morning. So that's really to develop as much optionality for the batteries as possible. Okay. And then also, this is probably going down a bit of a rabbit hole, but while the solar is generating during the day, the batteries can also, in addition to being charged, they can also perform really high frequency charge discharge cycles to help balance the grid. So even during the day, they're also going to be performing reliability benefits.
I do think it's worth mentioning that in order for Vermont to meet its renewable energy goals, certainly batteries will be a part of the overall picture. So even though this solar project isn't always working in conjunction with this battery, they both contribute to the overall goals of the state.
I'm really just trying to understand how it works. So I don't have any problem with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You had a question?
Yes, Melissa?
Yeah, the screening you're talking about, that I take it that can be added at any time if it's deemed necessary. I'm thinking, will we go through one complete year for the seasons to see how it looks? And is that something that if we deem necessary can be added later?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that is that can certainly be done. Yep. Basically what we would if that's a proposal that you guys would want to see, then we could certainly commit to that in our CPG filing. And I think you're spot on that it's important to give it some time.
I just want to clarify, Melissa's new to our board, and our energy plan has not been approved yet. It will be voted, hopefully approved on town meeting day as part of a readoption of our plan. And that is the only, in that enhanced energy plan, that's where we have the screening language. So I don't know how that timing works, but it's great. And we really appreciate the fact that you want to work with our town, and that's great. But we need to know, just wait a second, Kevin. We need to know the process of how to get, if you say, yeah, we'll do that, how do we need to get that in, writing somewhere? And we just need to know, I need to know how to do that. So I just want to make that statement.
And that's not something that's uncommon to us. Like even before the enhanced energy plan and a lot of the newer renewable energy standards, things that have been developed, we've been able to work with towns and make sure that requests are not only documented between us but also included in the CPG filing. And so yeah, that absolutely. We're open to working with you guys, and that's not something that's uncommon to us.
Okay, that's great. Kevin, I'm going to call on Jeff because he had his hand raised in the Zoom hand raised. So he's next.
Going back to the battery, and this is just an informational question. So what you're saying is there's actually no reason why the battery project and the producing project have to be next to each other, just that you have the space, basically. And
let me try to give a non-technical answer, Nathaniel, and then you can give it. Okay. So the same reasons why that site is good for a solar project are the same reasons why it's good for a battery project. And there is capacity at that substation to take both. So if a developer or the state or anybody were to be targeting a good place to facilitate that injection of either energy storage, which injects and charges from the grid, or a solar project, following those siting guidelines, we think they would end up in the same spot.
Yeah, I would just add that's electrically.
Yeah. And but also from view shed standpoint, and not needing to clear trees and all the other reasons.
Kevin, you had a question?
Well, just a point of clarification. I believe already the PUC has to take under advisement a planning commission's request for screening. So regarding Melissa's question, it's not as to whether we can influence screening, but there's more of an issue with the timing she's proposing.
So I think what we're saying here, Kevin, is if like we're ready to start discussing screening and working towards a memorandum of understanding as soon as you guys have time to provide comments, and we'll fit it into whatever process it needs to fit into. But the reason we're here presenting to you is so that you know who we are, and you know who we are, and we can work on it.
When would be the appropriate time to put together a memorandum of understanding?
Once you guys are certain with what you want.
Okay.
So if you guys all agree that you'd like us to propose language that would be incorporated into a memorandum of understanding or into a CPG petition, we're happy to propose that to you. So really just, if you guys want to do a site visit to look at the site first, to decide whether or not that's something you want, or if it's something you decide that you want because, hey, you know what, if we visited in a year and we all agree no screening is required, then, it's really as soon as you guys decide what you want, let us know. We're happy to propose the language to you. And, Kevin, you're absolutely right. You guys can provide that in comments to the PUC. And, in some cases, folks could say, I don't think screening isn't, required at all. And, the PUC would have to decide who's right. What we're saying is, if you guys want to add that requirement, we're happy to just agree to it up front. We don't see a lot of need for the PUC to have to decide who's right. Like this is your town, and if you guys want to see some screening, or you want to see some language that that we look at it once the project is done, we're committed to doing that with you.
I'm sorry, I probably missed it, but when is the estimated completion date? Time
So
frame?
we're hoping that it can be completed by the end of this year.
Okay.
We're likely the solar project would get completed first, and the battery energy storage project would get completed next year. But we're hoping the solar project would be completed this year. A lot of that depends on how long the PUC proceeding takes. If that takes a really long time, which it sometimes can, then it's entirely possible that we wouldn't be constructing until next year.
Do you know when the PUC proceeding is supposed to start?
So it'll start once we file a complete petition,
Okay.
which we're on track to do, very soon.
After the 45-day period.
Yep.
Which is soon.
We're targeting end of this month or beginning of March.
Okay.
What's the height of those arrays?
Well,
That wouldn't preclude us from doing a screening MOU, outside of the process, and I don't think that it would preclude you guys from filing comments with the PUC
okay.
if you opt to go that route.
So we can do that at any time.
Yeah, typically the PUC will set a schedule, but they'll also generally hear comments. And again, we're happy to address anything with you guys directly as well. Oftentimes the PUC proceedings can be, legal in nature, a little more complicated, and we find it's more effective and folks get what they want if we can just work together.
Okay, someone else had a question, Rob?
Yeah, I was just wondering what the height of those trackers are.
Yeah, so great question. So it obviously depends on the time of day. In the mornings and in the evenings, when they're tilted either to the east or the west, They can be, 11 feet tall, I think, at the top. So kind of similar to what you would see for your typical fixed tilt solar project. Similar height to that, although they do pitch to a little bit. Typical fixed tilt is at 30 degrees. These will rotate to 60 degrees. So they'll be a little higher than what you're used to for a fixed tilt system. And then during the middle of the day or on a cloudy day, when there's more diffuse radiation, they're actually oriented flat. And they'll be about, 6-7 feet at the height of that torque tube.
I think Tom had a question.
Tom?
Yeah, actually, Melissa asked the question and I got the right answer. Thank you.
Good.
I had another question. I just don't know as far as in my mind that I can envision the size of this. What is it? It's like in comparison to the one that's outside of Virgins or just near Virgins?
Well, which one?
Oh, the one on seven on our
At the
Oh,
bottom of the hill,
yeah,
right near the intersection.
hill, yeah.
Big one
Yeah,
flashing
so
around.
I believe that what you're looking at there is a 1 megawatt array with an additional 500 kilowatts. So I believe that they actually built the project at first at 1 megawatt. So little less than half of this size. But I think that since then they've actually added on to the south an additional project that's doing some net metering.
Sorry, I was being literal. How big?
Oh, how big? Like in terms
How
of
big
acreage?
is it? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So our project is approximately 20 acres. That project in Virgins, you're probably looking at like total fenced area, maybe 8 to 10 acres.
Okay, I was getting an idea.
Yep.
Thank
So
you.
there's another project in New Haven. If you're coming from New Haven Junction, on the left, kind of on the wide open flat before you get to Virgins.
Yeah.
That's a 2.2 megawatt project. So similar size to that.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that the one that's set back more and that has the sheep?
Correct.
Okay.
Have you, as far as the ground cover maintenance, has grazing so far been pretty much taken care of that in various on various properties? How is that?
Yeah. Chris, you want to take a swing at this one? Mute.
It's not perfect. Obviously sheep don't graze as well as mowers mow. So I think you end up using both. So, but what we see the advantage though is the dual use. It's not necessarily saving money on maintenance, but actually getting use out of the ag land.
Right. That's what I kind of like the idea of you're talking about the pollinating or pollination plants.
Yeah.
For bees in the area. That I think that's a great idea.
Yes, we're in touch with a few people who are interested in putting apiaries in our existing projects. So yeah, that's something that we're pretty excited about too.
Jeff?
Yeah, I have another question. So is this project public knowledge yet, or will that not happen until you file your petition?
No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, so in addition to speaking with you guys tonight, we've also we popped into kind of the visitor business section on the select board a few weeks ago and just basically introduced a lot quicker than this. You guys are getting the more comprehensive presentation, but we popped in and introduced the project to the select board. We've spoken with the energy committee about it. And as I mentioned, we've reached out to the abutting neighbors. So it's absolutely, in the public domain.
Yeah, well, my follow-on question is, have you had or do you anticipate any problems or opposition to this plan? That's not a trick question, right?
Yeah, well, we hope not.
But you've developed this before, so I don't know what.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason why we spend so much time doing outreach before filing is so that if there is opposition, we can take comments and include feedback in our proposal. So, I mean, one piece of feedback that we have received already is that this field people do use to get into the mountains. So people do enjoy walking around the edge of the field, and you can see here that there's a 50-foot setback that will allow continued access up and around the project area. So obviously people won't walk through the field, but they can continue to use it for access to wherever they may be going or cross country around it.
I think to directly, no, we have not had any opposition to the project so far. Most folks, we feel like this project is in a really good location from a visual perspective. That tends to be the primary concern that people have is, are these things in your face in a place where you drive by them every day? And we really try to find projects that are as hidden as possible. And so we feel like this project's really good. And so far, we haven't had anybody come out in opposition of it. And we certainly hope that remains the same.
And this project has had a lot of, or this site has had a lot of history and a lot of controversy around it.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody on the planning commission knows that this is the gravel pit site, or the old gravel pit site. So there's something to be said about that. And I tend to hike the ledges a lot, so I know it from there. Basically, it's the green field.
And we didn't have time to hike the ledges and go for you, but that is the location where it'll be most visible. I tend to think these things look better from above and at a distance, but there's no denying it'll definitely be in the view shed from the ledges.
Everything is. The ledges are great.
Yeah. I think seeing these and just seeing windmills once in a while in certain areas, it actually makes me feel optimistic in seeing these. So
that's great.
So anyone else on the board have anything to say or have any questions? Bill, I see you hiding there. You joined us. Or anyone from the public?
Not hiding, Katie.
I know. I just didn't see you before.
Has anybody made a calculation about how much progress this would create towards our renewable energy?
They mentioned that earlier, yes. And
yeah, I could. So, based on what you guys, you did some really great work in the enhanced energy plan. I believe what you calculated is that in order to be on track in 2025, you'd want to see 60 or 7,600 megawatt hours roughly of renewable energy, and then 16,000 megawatt hours by 2050. I think where you guys are at today is roughly 3,600 megawatt hours of production. And this project would add another 4,500 megawatt hours. So this project would pretty much put you right on target for your 2025 goal. And boy, is it interesting to look at, out to 2050 and think about, even more. But this would certainly, I think, get you a long ways, over halfway towards your 2025 goal.
81. 8,100.
Is that what it is?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, that's what the two, what's
Yeah,
your
I
project?
did,
was.
I did basic math.
Yeah. And you do it well. So 8,100 compared with what's our goal by 2025?
7,600.
Oh, okay. So we'd be ahead of that. We'd have already achieved the 2025 goal. Do I understand correctly?
We have existing, they did calculations on existing facilities, and we have 3,600. And this would add 4,500
Right.
to equal 81. Is that correct?
Yeah. So by the end of 2022, be the first year of production for this plant, you would have met your 2025 goal.
And how much, does anybody know off the top of their head, what's going on with the landfill with respect to goals?
In megawatts?
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't know the number.
Be a little less than a quarter than what we would generate, right?
Yep. I believe that's 500 kilowatts. Is that correct?
Chris, do you know? Chris Curley, do you know?
No, I do not.
Okay. I thought Ian was going to be. I thought Ian was going to be.
If it is a net metered project, which I believe it is, the largest it could be would be 500 kilowatts, which would be a little less than a quarter.
Yeah, it is a net metered because it's Acorn. It's a co-op. Okay, so we have some other things to talk about tonight, but if everyone's good,
So
if there's any more questions,
would you guys like us to draft some language around a proposed screening or a site visit, or do you guys want to talk about that separately? Or
well, if you want to start without a draft and send it, to yeah, you could just send it to Chris, Curley, and myself, and then we could talk about it from there, or just I think it's more knowing the right time to get it, to at least for me, the timing of this is sometimes a little confusing, but I think that then we could talk about it, and that would be a start if you had some sort of
yeah, and
template.
we could put a little more context to the timing and how it all works, and yeah. So that sounds terrific, and thank you everybody for your time tonight. We really appreciate you you taking this opportunity, and I wish we could have been there in person, but hopefully soon enough.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. It was a good presentation.
Have
Thanks.
a great day, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay. All right, next. So I'm going to go back to administrative matters. And the first item there is public awareness for the town plan vote on town meeting day. And yes, it is on the ballot. And it's Article 5 on the ballot. The town plan is Article 5. So just as individuals and family members, try to get everyone to vote and vote on the town plan. But we talked last time about doing, posting something about that, and Jeff offered to write up a piece discussing the town plan, which I sent out to everybody. And I thought we should just have a conversation about that. If there's any comments, I know Kevin, you had a comment earlier that you and Jeff discussed. So I guess we can just have that discussion now. Do you want to start? Wait, what? You want to give a presentation?
Can I
What'd you
just
say?
say something first?
Jeff's going to say something first, unless Tom Wallace, is your comment unrelated?
Oh, it's related. I basically just wanted to thank Jeff for a very concise little write-up on that. I think it's very helpful.
Okay.
It's too long, and I think people can understand it. So
Yeah,
thank you.
I just want to say what the way I thought about this was, if someone came up to me and said, "Hey, you're on the planning commission. What's this new town plan about? What's in it that's important? What should I know about it?" That this is what I would. So I tried to put it in a conversational tone rather than a bureaucratic tone, and to make people say, "Oh, okay, well that's interesting. Here's why I should think about it." That was my goal, and I tried to keep it to 3 pages, and I did. Actually, I wanted to keep it to 2 pages, but I ran out of space. So,
Okay, Kevin?
Just a refresher, what's the strategy? Is this front page forum post or posters, flyers? I just need a little refresher on what we're going to do with this.
I think that the plan is evolving. We definitely would post it on Front Porch Forum. I personally think that, it would be great to somehow get it, in everybody's mailbox, but I'm not sure how to do that. Or, it's a hard thing to post, but maybe, I don't know, this is where, we need to decide as a group how we want to do that. It's a little long to do we can't post it. I think we would need a 1-pager to post, and have some, color. And so we could maybe take some excerpts from it, or we could maybe, we don't have a whole lot of time left because the plan is a long document, and but it also is important that people know where to go to read it. And I think you have that on here.
I do at the end.
Right. But we might want to have it earlier on too. Not everybody may read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because some people, 3 pages is way too long for them.
Can we post this on the town website? In some fashion?
I don't know.
Should be able to.
Yeah, why couldn't we put a PDF underneath the planning commission or something?
Oh, no, it was already there.
I mean, even though it's 3 pages, I mean, it's succinct, and I think it represents what we've done very well.
Right. Well, that's an idea. What did you say, Melissa?
No, I thought you meant the actual plan, which is already there, but you're talking about the breakdown of it.
Yeah, I don't know what to call it. I didn't want to call it Town Plan for Dummies.
Well, you wrote that, and then I was like, this is exactly what I would have said. So, but I didn't. You did.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we did something, the actual ballot isn't getting posted, is it, Chris? Do you know? Is the ballot getting posted around town? I mean, you have to request it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a copy of it at the town clerk's office. I mean, the town office posted on the wall. But other than that, I think that's the only place it'll be physically posted.
You can see it on the website.
Right. It sort of seems like it should be a little bit more out there, but that's not my job, I guess. All right, so if we get it on the website and Front Porch Forum, it is, I mean, another option would be to try to get, some sort of flyer, but I think we would have to, cut the length or just as a reminder, but I would need to talk to Sharon about what we could do, in terms of mailing something. I mean, we should be able to mail something. What?
Could we, even getting flyers, a basic 1-page flyer in the shops, in the businesses in Bristol would help, I think.
Right. Right.
you know, just to have people
No,
see it,
definitely. It
you
doesn't,
know.
it doesn't take much. So, I try not to volunteer for everything. I'm trying not to volunteer. So, volunteers.
I can't, the next 2 weeks are so insane for me. I just, I can't do anything
Okay.
right
Well, I'll
now.
see what I can do.
Apologize.
I'll see what I can do with that. And I'll talk to Sharon and see if there's any way to, you know, get it out in the mail to everybody. Okay. So is there any comments on it? Anything anyone wanted to change or make any suggestions to change? Or is everybody happy as can be with that?
Great the way it is, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. All right. Onward. Okay, let me look at the agenda. Okay, so also with town meeting day, there are 2 informationals. And basically they are like you know, as close as we're going to get to a town meeting. So they're going to be Zoom meetings, select board hosting, and it's an opportunity for the public to ask questions. I think it's really a question and answer. Chris, do you have any idea of the format? Are they going to go, or is it just questions on any?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't think they're going in any kind of order, but maybe they might be. But I think they might, when I talked to Valerie about it, they might be trying to go in some sort of order, but they're not going in terms of the articles like they do in town meeting. But I don't think they're not going to take questions that are out of order if something's already been discussed. I may be totally off base. This is just, I'm guessing. So the town plan being on that agenda, being one of the articles, it would be good. I'm going to go to both informationals. I'm going to be present there. It would be great if as many people can be present as well to answer questions, especially if you were involved with the energy plan. That's not my strongest suit. So people who worked on the energy plan, I would love to have them at least, you know, someone be there for, you know, one of the meetings. So the meetings are the 22nd and the 1st. So they're the Monday before town meeting day and then the Monday before that. And all the Zoom information, I think it's on the website. It'll probably get sent out. I think it's on the, I don't know if it's on the articles or not. So there are the town plan is Article 5. And there are, hold on a second, 37 articles. But you know how that goes. And the information will start at 7. So, you know, the beginning of town meeting is always long. You know, it takes a long time to get through those first articles, and then it seems to speed up a bit. So I'm guessing that most likely the town plan will get talked about on the 1st. But as I said, I'm not 100% sure. So it'd be great to have people there and available. All right. Anybody have any comments on? No comments? Okay. So quiet group tonight. Okay, so I have revisit proposed zoning updates discussed this past fall. So we went through, we had a list that we started discussing when we were trying to wrap up the subdivision regs. And we tabled some of those, and I think I sent that out to people tonight. I apologize for a lot of emails, but I was sort of pulling it together. Also, Kevin made a list of many things, small and large, of concern, which I started to read over and try to figure out what they meant, Kevin, and I had trouble. So, and a lot of them I know are small issues, and some are big issues, and some have been dealt with. So, I was trying to, I was thinking about how best it would be to go through this, and it might make sense to, look at this as sort of, a process that we spend some time on, and look at it section by section. And discuss, because a lot of the board is new, and it would be a good exercise to go through, and we can't adopt, or we wouldn't be reapproving the zoning until a next, opportunity to vote on it. So that's not going to be until, I don't know when the next, after town meeting day, election day in the fall. I don't, possibly. So what do people think about that? So kind of setting out basically go through the zoning and look at the sections, look at the use sections, maybe start with the use table and kind of just work through it. And then that would give people who are new, exposure and a little bit better understanding of how it all works. So
It would definitely help
okay.
me.
And so Melissa, we've had for the last couple of years, well, I guess it's always like this, right, Bill? It's always just we're putting fires out. Isn't that the way it works? You're muted.
Yes, you're right. Always has been that way, always will be.
Okay. So when I started on the board, we were in the middle of the zoning rewrite, and I didn't have a clue as to what we were doing. So, and then that was finished, and then, which is a strange way to start with zoning in a way, because really it's the plan, the vision for the town, and then the zoning is what implements that vision. So
Right, but we had just done the town plan.
I know, but I missed that part.
Oh, okay.
So it all depends on when you come in,
Yes.
what part of the cycle. So I was, and I was, asked to make, I was part of a discussion of making decisions about a vision that I I wasn't fully aware of. And I think sometimes you forget, that is really what it's all about. That's where we're going, but I won't philosophize on this anymore. So, how do people feel about that approach to? So we will go through, and I'll need help from you, Chris, to kind of keep. And of course, I did not get anyone to take minutes, so it is being recorded. That's good. We are going to need to do something about that because we need. I mean, it's recorded, it's fine, but it's nice to have written minutes. And I'm jumping around, but I meant to ask you that, Chris. Did you talk to anybody about last time you said you were going to talk to someone, select board, about possibly sharing someone for minutes?
They approved posting to hire somebody to do DRB minutes, but I don't know. Between Valerie and myself, we haven't crossed paths in the office since then. I just got a quick email on it. I don't know if that was for the planning commission as well. I'll have to follow up with her on that.
Yeah, it seems like if they're going to get, I'd fight for that. So if the DRB can have a minute taker, I think we can. since this is the vision group, right? Um, so moving forward, I'd like to know, we have some these zoning questions, and we can start with, I mean, Kevin, you have a lot on there, and I really didn't know it needed to be more organized for me, unless it was in order, which is good. You've put a lot of time into reviewing the plan, so I'd kind of like to hear how you might like to proceed.
Well, so the list, I condensed the list from just comments in a document to listing them out by page.
Right.
And it pretty much goes down through the document. And I mean, and it's just stuff. Some of it's like, seems like we should be discussing, and some of it's like, I'm not sure. Some of it's personal, and some of it's just like, we should be discussing as a board.
Right.
I guess the other thing that I'm thinking about, and I don't know if they're intermingled, but we also have the, I call it the action list as part of the plan, and
Implementation.
implementation plan. Yes, thank you. So I don't know if we should at least be doing a cursory look at that and laying out a schedule of what we need to do there, because really zoning is a subset of that whole implementation plan.
I agree.
I kind of throw in between the two. Do we just jump into zoning, or do we take a minute to really understand what our implementation plan is?
Well, our implementation plan is not approved yet, so I was thinking.
Well, hopefully in 2 weeks it will be.
Next meeting it will be. Well, that was initially how I mean, I think we can maybe do these things in tandem and together, one before the other. Not before the other, but at the same time. Some of the implementation, we might have an offshoot. We might have a subcommittee or something working on something. And not all of the implementation issues are actions that we take as a board. So I'm totally with you. I mean, I guess maybe that's something we need to decide. How do we want to proceed now? What do we want to work on? What do we want to, I felt like these zoning issues were sort of hanging out there. That it would be a good idea to kind of clean them up and just take kind of some of these sections and review them and discuss them. But we could, pair that with other projects as well. So go ahead.
I guess the reservation, and granted, the zoning needs to be discussed, but I can see the zoning changes or the review of the zoning to be almost as in-depth or protracted, however you want to look at it, as the plan. And I don't think we should lose sight of the implementation plan in the meantime.
No, I definitely don't. I feel very strongly about the implementation plan, because I just think they both need to be dealt with, and we can, but let's hear from some other people. Jeff.
So a question really about what we're doing on the UDR, because the UDR has been approved, and adopted by vote.
Right.
So is this just a question of clearing up ambiguities, or what exactly, what authority do we have to change things now? Can we unilaterally change things in the UDR? What are we trying to do with it?
Well, there were some things that were sort of hanging that didn't get, when we did the UDR, most of the work was adding the subdivision regs, and there were some other sections looked at. And in the process, some other questions came up We made some tweaks with the zoning piece of it. And some other questions came up that it felt like it was going to be a much bigger conversation. And something Chris has taken note of some things, as he's been doing, working with permits and such, and people haven't been able to do things that seem reasonable. So they have come to the forefront. So there's kind of a handful of things. I think we're not going back to starting from scratch. But that is really the role of the planning commission too. But we wouldn't be able to change anything until we brought it to a vote again. So we would have to bring the plan to a vote with a list of things that would be updated.
The plan or the UDR?
No, the UDR, I'm sorry. But we could do the same with the plan. Every year you could do that if you are on top of things.
So it's not just a question of making changes by our vote to the UDR. It's we would have to approve changes. We'd have to go to the select board, which would have to go to a town vote.
Yeah, we'd have to do the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay.
But if it's a matter of, say, a dozen tweaks or changes to bylaws in the whole document, and it's been discussed and we've approved it and it's been approved, then it could go through that process.
Sure.
The same if there was something in the plan that we wanted to change. And then there's also the question of changing the town arrangement or agreement that we need to vote on the plan. The whole town needs to vote on the plan. I don't know if we can change that, Chris, but we would have to, there's only 2 towns in the county that do that.
Right. The history behind that was the select board. I thought Peter explained it. I mean, the select board made that decision.
I was there that night. I remember that.
A long time. I mean, it was,
meeting.
Yeah, but they just, we've been voting on zoning changes forever. And that was a decision by the select board that they had the opportunity to do it. And they felt that having that unilateral power given to the select board didn't make sense. And so they're the ones who would approve the changes if you don't vote on them. And they felt very strongly that the people need to know what's going on and have a voice during the process other than just hopefully catching a hearing.
Now there's interim zoning, which does not have to go to a town vote.
Correct.
So you could, if there's something that you're really struggling with or that keeps coming up over and over again, that could be adopted as interim change.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't see anything right off that hits that button. The biggest change that really needs to be addressed from a zoning standpoint that I run up against is some of the density issues on housing. Because we addressed the big issues that unless we wanted to look back at, like you said, the use table and get into possibly opening up or removing some uses there. I'm pretty comfortable with the use table at this point. We got a few idiosyncrasies, like down in Rockydale, that could use some tweaking because there had a few things that got held up there. But for the most part, we hit the biggies in the last rewrite, which were the site plan requirements for downtown, home businesses, the adding of the contractor yards to the rural ag areas, and I don't remember the third one off the top of my head, but we dealt with those during the last round.
Kevin?
I think most of my comments, probably 90% of them, have to do with use tables. I, being a villager, have a burr in my saddle that the zoning regs are not drop into the existing conditions of the village. And, I was on the planning commission zoning board in the 80s. when it was just way out of whack and we started making some changes, small baby steps at the time towards making the zoning regs fit what the development in the village, at least the village, is concerned. And I think there's been great strides, but I think there's still things in those use tables that, at least from a village point of view, and where we want the village to expand or how we want the village to look like when it expands, merit some discussion.
I just want to make a point about that. I know I showed this before and I didn't bring it to the office. Did I send it to you guys? I did send it to everybody. Okay, thank you. I'm glad I remembered to do that.
I didn't get anything.
Okay, I'll get it. I'll get
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
You probably need some other stuff too.
Yeah, that's it.
So I'm sorry. It's been hard, you know.
That's all right. No.
Zoom. So the bottom line, how their biggest message really is that if you want to develop, if you're struggling with developing dimensional standards or the zone, you know, zoning and setback and density for an area, the best thing to do is to actually go out and measure, look at the areas that you like and look at the areas that are working and measure the setback, measure the side setbacks, you know, and get all of that information, photograph it and say, okay, this is what we have. And this is what we would like to continue or repeat, and use those dimensions, use those measurements. And they actually have forms to fill out to do that, like worksheets. And it makes a lot of sense because most of the zoning in these little villages did not come from what was existing in these villages. It came from suburbia. And in the, you know,
Well,
50s.
yeah. I mean, that was one of the issues we, I think it was Brandy Saxon when she was working with us on redoing the village dimensional standards. She really wanted to push all the houses right up tight to the street, more sort of like in a downtown-y feel like you've got, or in like Burlington where the houses are right there. And we're like, that's not our village. She's like, oh no, but that's, I'm like, so we did just what you're saying, Katie. We went out and we took measurements on a handful of properties and came and said, we've got 25 feet, 30 feet off the center line. That's a more realistic, that's our current settlement pattern. Let's mimic that through the rest of the village. So I agree, that's a great exercise.
Yeah, so that's one piece of it. And then another piece is, you know, then being able to take maybe some of these bigger buildings and not have them single family home, because that is not, you know, maybe make them into a duplex, but that it feels like a single family home and functions like a single family home. Bill is giving me the eye. Here he comes.
You got my attention.
I know. You know, I think it can work really well, but I'm just one person.
My only concern and my only comment's always been on that is the hill section of Burlington, and I'll leave it at that.
Could you explain that, Chris? I don't get the reference.
The hill section of Burlington was cut up into apartments, and they were all big old homes like what we have in the village. You can't find hardly a single family home in that area anymore. They've all been sliced and diced into multi-unit apartments, all through that section of Burlington. So that
Primarily for students.
That's campus housing.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But that's an extreme, you know. Everything in moderation, my father told me. Bill, you're not going to be allowed to talk. Sorry.
I guess this, hasn't there been some legislative action that essentially makes a two-family house by right?
They're working on accessory dwelling units.
Well, whatever you want to call it.
Well, that's different. That's different. That's different than a duplex.
Not really, but yes and no. Yeah, I mean,
In
it's
the
also
old
a
days-
limitation.
It depends.
In the old days, we used to call them mother-in-law apartments.
Right, or granny flats.
We
I
can't
never
call Can't use names like that anymore. Anyway, it's an important discussion, and this is one of those issues where we have a little difference of opinion. Yeah.
Well, it's also, I think when we go, and this is one of my issues. So this is something that I feel strongly about. And I think everybody should, I mean, we want to be able to house, our kids and our grandkids and our parents that can't live in a big house, and with the cost of housing now, which is ridiculous, it's very limiting.
Aren't
So,
there already a number of those in the village
yeah,
that are apartment that when you
Well, that's
drive by, the only thing you notice is that there's a place and there's maybe 3 or 4 cars parked. Other than that,
and a big recommendation, the same group that did that booklet, is the parking and not requiring those extra parking spaces for the accessory dwelling unit. So it does, and if you do have parking, it has to be back. It has to be, or not, it doesn't have to be on the site. Tom?
I'd like to hear what Bill's divergent thoughts are. He started there, but didn't finish.
I know I keep cutting him off. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I feel quite strongly, Tom, that Bristol has evolved over the decades, some would say centuries, to be largely single-family homes, with some exceptions. And I'm also a strong believer that if you change zoning of a particular part of the town, that sooner or later, the structures and the use will change accordingly. And that if that is to happen in the village of Bristol, that will change the character of our village. I respect the goal of wanting to increase density for various reasons. The one which Katie has cited already. But also there's a collateral argument about infrastructure, efficient use of infrastructure. Those are fair points and reasonable. But while I might not choose the hill section of Burlington because it has come to be dominated by students, I would suggest that much the same has happened in the Old North End of Burlington and in large parts of Rutland and other places where they have increased the density. It does make housing more affordable, but you tend to have, in my experience, my observation, as you get away from single family owner occupied units, less stewardship of the property, less concern about taking care of the lawn and the shrubs and painting the house. It's been my experience that happens. I've certainly seen it in very dramatic examples, much more than anything we have here in Vermont in cities like Chicago. And it changes the character of the neighborhood. I suppose, Tom, my as I'm refreshing my memory about why I feel this way, it's part of the general belief that people take better care of their own property than they do of someone else's. And so the issue is really more owner-occupied housing than it is the structure of the building. And I think if we change our zoning and or regulations and or plan, I should say, to allow for much higher density in the village, there will come a time when the residents will regret it, and they'll wonder to some extent why we did so. So those are my thoughts, Tom.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you for the thoughts. I agree. I've seen that happen myself. So yeah, that's something we'll need to guard ourselves to, or have extensive discussion about at any rate.
Yeah.
You go.
So Melissa had her hand.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that would not be addressed. I mean, you would zone something, allow a larger home to be broken into duplex or apartments, but why would you not require a certain level of maintenance and to that property? I mean, a homeowner who doesn't mow their grass for 3 months in the summer, am I wrong in that they're not allowed to do that?
No, there's no ordinance requiring you to maintain your property other
Okay.
than health ordinances. If it becomes unhealthy, then the health inspector or official could come in and deal with it. Other than that, nope, you can do whatever you need to.
Why can't we have ordinances for these particular, for something like that we're not allowed to have ordinances? I'm not sure.
What we are, it's a fair question, and I understand your point, and it's a reasonable expectation or thought, but in my experience, the only sustainable solutions come through choices that people make of their own will, not because they're required to do so by a regulation. And so if we rely on regulation of a kind that's highly subjective and difficult to interpret and enforce, we're going to be disappointed. Especially on something related to aesthetics or what kind of maintenance you make on your home. At some point, you start drifting into some of these situations where there are overwhelming. You've seen I'm sure the parodies of probably an insurance commercial where that fellow gets in trouble because the lady next door, and it could have been a man, I guess the man was there too, but he wasn't saying much. She complained to him about how high his hedge was, and then she cut off the post for his mailbox.
Yeah.
And it's very, when something's subjective, there was a lawn someplace. I don't know if it was in Bristol or someplace not too far away. It was all wildflowers. Looked okay to me. I thought the person was obviously liked wildflowers and maybe didn't want to mow their yard. But there were other neighbors who didn't like it at all. So who gets to write and enforce those ordinances of a kind that relate to aesthetics and maintenance? So why does that lead me back to the original proposition? If you own your own place, you just have a natural tendency to want to make it look good and to take some dignity and pride in it, not to take anything away from anybody else. But quite often people are, for the very reasons we're thinking about increasing density, they're stressed financially, perhaps emotionally. For them, taking care of their place is not such a high priority. And I think as we look out ahead, years ahead for Bristol or most any town, you want it to be, in my view, I want it to be, hope it will be, let me put it that way. Hope it will be a place that people feel happy and take some take some pride in making it look good and taking care of it. And that's much more likely to happen when people own their place than when they don't.
So apartments, any apartments and duplexes should be outside of the village, you're saying?
Oh, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, I'm saying, well, new ones. Yeah, I misunderstood. I thought you might have been talking about the ones we already have. We have them intermingled in amongst the single family homes.
Right,
And
and I don't see any lack of, I mean, maybe I don't drive around the village enough or walk around to see a lack of upkeep and care.
in general, you're right. But it's like a lot of different issues. There's something in the way of a tipping point, and if you, it's not really an issue or an overwhelming issue until it is, and then it can change fairly quickly because the people who feel differently start moving away to a town where there are more single family owner occupied homes. Let me emphasize owner occupied as a strictly theoretical thought experiment. I think you'd get the same effect that I'm trying to describe with owner occupied duplexes or triplexes.
Okay,
I think you would.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
That's, and that, I just want to interject, because I talk too much in these anyway, so I like it.
Yeah, you were complaining we were being too quiet.
No, I just wanted to just emphasize what Bill said, is that you can have owner occupied, and that is sort of the beauty of the accessory dwelling unit, because it is owner occupied. Typically, that's the situation. And, you know, that is, I believe, true. The co-housing, which we had this conversation when that was happening, it does have a couple rentals in there now. I mean, but it's owned by the group. And so it's like, and then that's like a condo setup. Anyways, that does make a difference. The absent landlord to a large multifamily building that then, as we all know, can start being a problem.
It's the same with the businesses on Main Street. I've had 3 different landlords with my business, and you know, for me, it was kind of before I started with Tom and Carol, and it's just gone down from there, because I went to a place that was an absent landlord, absent from town, just didn't care about the property, did as little as they could. And, but the place I have now, the owner occupied it and did nothing with it. So there are a lot of issues with the building I'm in now.
Mhm.
And owner occupation, or occupancy, sorry, does not necessarily mean good upkeep and good stewardship of the property. Is all it's, you know. That's that's
Scratching
kind
your
of,
hand or raising your hand?
Yep.
Kevin,
So
is that a
to
raise or?
Bill's point, I mean, I am a proponent of better use of the housing stock, if you will, in the village. It's like oversized for today's needs, and obviously I'm biased because
You got one.
we're sitting in an owner duplex. But I can look from our house in different directions and see 3 non-owner duplexes and quads and see the difference in maintenance that is on those buildings. And I certainly don't think we want to propagate that image or promote that sort of operation of housing stock in the village. But I think, certainly from an owner occupied or owner shared facility, and whether it's called the in-law thing or whatever the current buzzword is, has a lot of merit. And there are, I can't look around the same circle and see people that have duplexes, owner occupied duplexes that I drew those other 3 examples of from my little point in the village. But typically when you see that, you do see better care.
I mean, what's the factual basis for that? This is generalizing and stereotyping of an incredible degree. I walk around town all the time. I see owner-occupied houses that are well kept. I see owner-occupied houses that are a mess. I see rental houses that are beautiful. I see rental houses that are a mess. We could count them, I suppose, but this is like policy based on anecdote.
Well, I think that,
Anecdote.
Rob wanted to say something after you're done.
I'm done.
Okay, Rob?
I had a question. I don't know if there have been any studies done in the past about what the town can handle with growth and increase in density before upgrades are needed to infrastructure as far as streets. I know parking's already an issue. To add a potential another 3rd residence on top in the existing footprint, what would that do? That kind of stuff. Has anything like that been done?
Well, I that was one of the things that I actually is in our implementation plan that I would like to do. And whether we write a grant to get someone to do it, there is a lot of work being done in this very particular issue now, of kind of taking stock of what you have, what, and what you could handle, or what, so there's a lot of, this is, I think, what we do need to find the facts and then figure out. I mean, there's a lot, we can look at the worst case scenario. We don't want that, but I think there are a lot of ways to do it. There's a lot of different ways to gradually just provide opportunities
So
for more housing. But I think we can't speculate about it. We have to actually do the groundwork and figure out what is possible.
Yeah.
I mean, there are limitations because of septic. That's the biggest.
I would say septic is the biggest issue
Right.
we have in the village. Is that we do not have a municipal sewer system.
Right.
And
There are
almost all the
houses
homes
that are permitted for, like my house is, it's got a lot of bedrooms in it, But if there's only 2 people living in it, we have extra septic, and you could break it and have an apartment that basically uses that septic. So it's
For the most part, that's what I'm saying. Is
that
I'm
doesn't
just saying,
work for everybody though.
right. The number one limiting factor right now when people come to me looking to do accessory dwelling units is the lack of septic on their site. So that's my only point with septic, where I was trying to go with that is it's
And that's
and that's a statewide
that's across
issue.
the state. That is a big issue. Because our population isn't changing. It's just rearranging right now, at least, into smaller groups. But we just need to, it doesn't have.
It's changed a lot in the last 6 months.
Because of all those people, but they're going to go back home. I don't know.
I'm sorry, what are you referring to?
Oh, COVID, all the people moving up from Manhattan.
Oh,
well, the biggest thing, as Tom probably can contest, talking with a local realtor, we're not seeing a lot of out-of-state influx in the small towns. What we're seeing is a lot of Chittenden County moving out of Chittenden County to the small towns. And then Chittenden County is backfilling fairly rapidly. It's sort of the trends that I've been watching. We're seeing some out-of-state, but it's a lot of our urban becoming rural.
Well, this is a big topic, and it's a hard topic.
Yes, it is. And I want to just say a word to Jeff that I understand your point, and much of our zoning and regulation of all types and kinds is based on judgment and experience. Not everything can be handled with accumulated evidence and empirical induction. I do see your point, but mine is based on experience over a long span of time, observing how people treat property that they own as compared with someone else's property. And about 2/3 of all the housing units in the nation are owner occupied. It's actually a little higher than that here in Vermont. I think it's pushing 70 or 75%. And whether it's because of students or economic stresses or any number of other reasons, people who rent, in my sincere experience, don't put as much time and effort and money into taking care of their place. And it's not true of just housing. It's almost any kind of property you can imagine, as do the people who own their own property.
most people who live in an apartment or live in a duplex, literally they are not responsible for the maintenance of that property. It is the owner's responsibility. So it is not the renters who are not doing what they need to do. It is the owners of the property not doing what they need to do. I just kind of want to clear that up a little. I mean, there are plenty of renters that do work and put money in, even though they are not required to do it or responsible for it. But if they have a not great landlord, they end up doing that. And it's the onus is on the property owner. And I understand you saying, yes, if it's occupied by the owner, maybe it is more likely that they will take care of it, but it is certainly not a guarantee, as I can attest from the places that I have rented.
You were renting from a owner occupied unit? I don't
No,
know.
no,
It's
you
a
were
contradiction.
saying that people who live in the units and they do not own it, therefore they are renting it, that they are less likely to put money and effort into the property. That
And-
may be true, but they are not required to.
Well, I hear
The
you.
owner is responsible for that. They pay rent for that to be taken care of. So
I hear you.
you know,
I hear you. So I'll just to prove that I heard you, I'll repeat it.
okay,
That the renter is not required to maintain the property. It's the responsibility of the owner.
that's correct.
Did I hear you correctly?
Yes.
And my point is that the owner occupied property in general, and you're helping me clarify and better express my thoughts. The owner occupied unit in general is better maintained than a rental unit. And it could be very well due to a lack of responsibility by the landlord, and probably often is. But the basic idea, in my view, still remains.
Okay, well, we have some differing opinions here. Chris has to go make a phone call. So we scared him away. But this is important, and we've talked about this before, but it is still an issue that we need to address. And I think it's a process. So we need to start with open minds. And I think the best way to do that, God, I sound like a planner, is with a study. So anyways,
So is that tackling our implementation plan then?
that is.
Our implementation actions, moving to that as opposed to the zoning stuff?
Well, I think that, these things can go hand in hand. We gotta figure out how we do a study, who's gonna do the study, do we need money to do a study, what are we studying? We need to kind of get a handle on that. And then, but I do think, I think we need to clean up these few zoning things as well. Would you agree? Would people agree with that?
Sure.
There were a couple things, or I don't know, Chris seemed, maybe we're fine.
Well, I think clean up, but I don't think clean up's a 5-minute job. I think
No.
we need to, at this point, come up with a roadmap.
Right. And, I don't have to do that. Someone else, we could maybe have a subcommittee or a couple of people to decide how you want to move forward and what we should be working on and how and when. I'd sort of like to shift. I feel like I've been kind of leading the charge here. Tom?
I think Rob's got a point there. We kind of drifted off from what we started to talk about was the implementation.
Yeah.
And so I think that maybe should be solidified, and maybe our next meeting say, okay, that's the subject of the meeting, is what are we going to do for the implementation and how we're going to do that. We're not going to do it in the next 15 minutes here. So I think we ought to make that a target for the next meeting.
I'll take the implementation plan and lay it out, and then we can, in some sort of a discussable format, and then we can take it from there.
That sounds great.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You want to do the agenda for next time too? Okay. That's great. And we can say then that if anyone can offer up a suggestion if you want to be done. Meaning.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Yes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Oh, and Jeff, so we will, do you want it? I didn't approve the motion to adjourn because I want to ask Jeff one more question. Do you want me to get that into Front Porch Forum or do you want?
No, I thought I think there were two separate things here. One was posting it on the town website. I was actually thinking about this. And one was posting it on Front Porch Forum. One was posting it on Front Porch Forum with a link to something posted on the town website.
Right.
And one was a flyer that might be put up around town.
I said I will work on
You
that.
could do that. So I could do the first one, and I thought, so I was thinking about this as we were talking. I could do a short thing in Front Porch Forum saying there's there'll be a vote on the town plan. Here's a short, like just a one paragraph description. There's a voter's guide, we could call it, or a user's guide to the town plan available on the town website at this, under the planning commission. Does that seem like a reasonable way to do that?
I would also suggest that you might solicit an article or a reporter from the Addison to maybe give us some exposure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Do you want to
so-
do that? Do you want to do that, Jeff, or?
I can try. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I would contact John Flowers.
Okay.
He's
Chris Ross, I think, does here too.
Okay.
Christopher Ross is handling at least the school,
Oh.
Bristol school activity.
Okay.
I think he'd be the most likely.
Okay.
All right. Well, I will try to contact them and I'll put something in Front Porch Forum. And I know Chris is gone. I think Chris can get it posted on the town website, the piece that I did, I think.
Yeah, I
Let's
will
see.
remind him of that.
Can we-
and I'll-
Can we
Sorry.
physically post it on at Holly Hall if people want to go by and just look at it there on the door,
Yeah,
on the outside?
the flyer, I don't think the 3-page thing, people won't even have, I think
I
that's,
don't know.
it's long to read, but
It's not 170 pages.
you know what? Think about it. Any ideas, Melissa, feel free to, mull it over as you're working away in your shop. And you can feel free to, communicate with me about it. And, I can get stuff up. You can probably get, we're around town. So, okay.
So Jeff, I can forward you Christopher Ross' email if you're interested.
That's fine. That would be great.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay.
Okay.
And
So in terms of timing, what do we got here? We have about 2 weeks. I think it might be good to try to post it twice in Front Porch Forum,
yeah, at least.
maybe relatively soon. And
Yeah.
then again in a week or so.
Okay.
But so we have to get it on the website right away then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess Chris will be back in Bristol on Friday, I guess, right? He works Mondays and Fridays. But he could probably do it.
I can
either.
also, yeah, other people can do it as well. Well, if he gets it on there on Friday,
Well, he could probably post it at any time. He doesn't have to physically be present.
Right, that's
to post
true.
it.
and Sharon could post it as well. Okay. We can communicate on this
Okay.
if you have any questions. All right. So we were in the middle of a motion, sorry. So motion second by Tom, that we are adjourning. So thank you, everybody. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having the Green Peak. That really helped.
That was good. Yeah.
I didn't know enough about that. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.